On a scorching day in prehistoric Africa, a group of small, upright creatures, our early ancestors, creep toward the massive carcass of a freshly killed elephant. Lions have just feasted and moved on. Now, with sharpened stones in hand, these primitive hominins clamber up the still warm body, slicing flesh and cracking bones for fat-rich marrow. This scene, raw and visceral, marks a pivotal turning point in our evolutionary story, because what we ate didn't just fill our stomachs, it shaped our species. From insect-chomping tree dwellers to meat-scavenging scavengers, fire-wielding hunters, and eventually farmers and global eaters, the human diet has never stood still. Every shift, from raw to cooked, forest fruits to grazing herds, and wild seeds to cultivated crops, reshaped our bodies, brains, tools, and societies. Our shrinking guts, growing brains, and evolving teeth are living fossils of our dietary past. But if change is our only constant, can there really be such a thing as a natural human diet? In this video, we uncover the fascinating story of what humans really evolved to eat. Not by chasing a single ideal menu, but by tracing the remarkable adaptability that made us who we are. Chapter 1. The First Bite. Somewhere on the grassy plains of East Africa over 2 million years ago, a quiet evolutionary revolution was taking shape. Not with fire or speech or civilization, but with food. A group of small bipedal hominins, waist-high to a modern adult, crept toward the body of a freshly killed animal, their hands gripping crude, flaked stones. They were not hunters, not yet, but scavengers, seizing opportunities left behind by lions, leopards, or hyenas. With surprising precision, they cut into meat and cracked bones to get to the calorie-rich marrow, their stone tools leaving behind the first archaeological evidence of a dietary shift that would forever change the trajectory of human evolution. Until this moment, our primate ancestors had spent tens of millions of years relying on fruits, leaves, nuts, and the occasional insect. Food that was easy to forage and digest with large guts and relatively small brains. But the introduction of meat, fat, and eventually marrow signaled not just a new menu item. It triggered a fundamental change in biology. Meat was dense, energy-rich, and easier to absorb, especially when paired with early forms of food processing like pounding or slicing. Over generations, this allowed our ancestors to shrink their digestive systems and reallocate energy to something far more demanding: the brain. As the gut shrank, the cranium expanded, and the energy-hungry human brain, costing 20% of our body's energy despite being only 2% of its mass, was born. But this wasn't a conscious trade. It was evolution responding to opportunity. Scavenging meat didn't just feed bodies, it fueled intelligence. These first bites of flesh were acts of survival, but they laid the foundation for culture, cooperation, and planning. They required early humans to develop new skills: tool use, timing, strategy, memory. Scavenging wasn't passive. It demanded bravery, pattern recognition, and teamwork. Some anthropologists believe our ancestors didn't always wait politely for predators to leave, but actively challenged them, charging in groups with rocks and shouts to drive away lions from fresh kills. These confrontations, risky and loud, may have spurred more than just courage. They could have strengthened social bonds, requiring communication, trust, and coordination. Meanwhile, as forests thinned and grasslands expanded, hominins found themselves in new environments with fewer trees and less fruit. Adaptability became essential. Those who could exploit scattered sources of nutrition, animal carcasses, buried tubers, fallen eggs, had a better shot at survival. And so began a pattern that would define human history. We didn't specialize, we diversified. Unlike many animals that adapted to one niche, humans became generalists. We learned to make use of what was available whenever and wherever it appeared. The bones from this era, found in places like Tanzania's Olduvai Gorge, bear silent witness to this transformation. Tool marks on fossilized zebra, antelope, and even elephant bones show not only that we ate meat, but that we returned to the same types of kills again and again. This wasn't accidental. It was behavior, habit, possibly even culture, and it didn't stop at meat. Some early hominins, like Paranthropus boisei, adapted to chew fibrous roots and hard nuts with massive jaws and thick molars, while others, likely ancestors of Homo habilis, favored softer foods and flexible diets. There wasn't a single ancestral diet. There were strategies, and as our ancestors refined them, their biology followed. Teeth shrank, jaws became narrower, stomachs more acidic, possibly to neutralize the bacteria in rotting meat. And through it all, the brain kept growing. The story of human evolution, in many ways, is the story of how we fueled that growth. Not just with calories, but with curiosity. Each new food source demanded new skills, tools, and knowledge. A stick to dig, a rock to smash, a memory of where the fruit ripens first, a sense of timing to know when the lions have had their fill. Chapter 1 of our dietary story isn't just about what we ate. It's about how eating pushed us to become something more than an ape with a clever hand. It was here, among bones, blades, and shared meals, that the seeds of humanity were planted. Not just in our guts or jaws, but in our minds. What began with a scavenged carcass beneath the African sun would, over time, lead to spears, fire, farming, and fast food. But it all started here, with a bite of raw meat, a tool in hand, and a species learning to reshape its fate, one meal at a time. Chapter 2. Fire and Flesh. Hundreds of thousands of years after the first stone tool sliced into sinew, another quiet revolution ignited beneath the trees and skies of prehistoric Africa, one that didn't just change what we ate, but how we ate it. At some point, possibly 1 million years ago, early humans gathered around flickering flames in caves and open plains, learning to tame fire, not just to ward off predators or warm the cold, but to transform food itself. Before fire, meat was muscle to tear, roots were fiber to grind, and every calorie extracted required work from jaw, gut, and time. But with fire came the miracle of pre-digestion. Cooking cracked open cell walls, broke starches into sugars, softened collagen in meat, and unlocked fats previously sealed within tissue. Suddenly, food that had once taken hours to chew could be swallowed in minutes. This was no small improvement. It rewired the entire human machine. Cooking allowed early humans to extract more energy from food with less effort, and that energy, freed from the labor of digestion, was redirected to our brains. Anthropologists call it the expensive tissue hypothesis. With smaller guts made possible by cooked, easier-to-digest food, our ancestors could afford to grow larger, more energy-hungry brains without sacrificing survival. The results are written in the fossil record, a sharp rise in cranial capacity with no corresponding growth in body size. But fire didn't just reshape our bodies, it transformed our social lives. For the first time, humans gathered in groups not only to eat, but to wait, because cooking takes time. Around these flames, people didn't just consume food, they shared it. They talked, planned, perhaps even told stories. Fire became a hearth, a home, a place where survival merged with culture. Even our sleep changed. Those glowing coals kept predators at bay, enabling deeper rest, which further fueled cognitive development. And with better sleep came more complex dreams, more vivid memories, sharper thinking. Over time, fire enabled an entire new mode of life. Raw meat could nourish a body, but cooked meat sustained a tribe. Meanwhile, our ancestors began applying fire to plants as well, softening tough tubers, detoxifying seeds, and coaxing new flavors from old staples. This wasn't just eating, it was innovation. With every new technique, our ancestors became more efficient, more adaptable, more creative. Yet the archaeological record tells us fire mastery didn't happen overnight. Burned bones and ash deposits appear inconsistently at first, scattered evidence of experimentation, trial, and error. But as time passed, these signs became more common and deliberate. Charred hearths deep within caves, blackened stones arranged in patterns, bones bearing the unmistakable marks of roasting. By the time Homo erectus and early Homo sapiens roamed the landscape, fire was no longer a novelty. It was an extension of the human body. Some researchers even argue that without fire, we wouldn't be human at all. Our teeth and jaws are far too small, our guts too short, our caloric demands too high to thrive on raw food alone. Cooking wasn't just an advantage, it became a necessity, and its impact reached even further. With cooked meat came more frequent hunting, as fire made large animals even more valuable. Hominins began crafting better tools, coordinating more strategic group hunts, and exploiting every edible part of their prey. Spears evolved from blunt stabbing sticks to aerodynamic throwing weapons. Butchery became an art. Groups began to specialize. Some prepared food, others hunted, others guarded the fire. Roles and relationships deepened, and through it all, fire remained the heartbeat of the human camp, a flickering center that provided warmth, protection, nourishment, and connection. It was around these flames that we practiced cooperation, built trust, and cemented bonds that would one day form the foundation of language, kinship, and culture. Fire was never just about heat. It was about transformation. It changed what food could be, what our bodies could become, and what our communities could build. As smoke curled into the African sky and cooked flesh filled the air with scent, early humans took another step away from their primate past, and a step closer to everything we would become. Chapter 2 of our dietary story is not just about survival, but about mastery. The taming of fire gave rise to a species unlike any the Earth had ever seen, one that could rewrite biology, shape behavior, and cook up its own destiny. Chapter 3. The hunters become human. By the time fire crackled nightly in camps across Africa, a new kind of human had begun to emerge, not just physically distinct, but behaviorally transformed. The era of passive scavenging was drawing to a close, replaced by something bolder, deadlier, and distinctly human: the age of the hunter. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors had learned to make use of the dead, the leavings of lions, the abandoned bones of predators. But now, they were the ones shaping the kill. With sharpened spears, coordinated tactics, and growing intelligence, they moved from the margins of the food chain into its very center. Fossil evidence across Africa, Europe, and Asia reveals a dramatic shift in strategy. Butchered bones of large prey like antelope, mammoth, and wild cattle show patterns of selective hunting, especially targeting young or prime-age males. An intentional choice made by groups who had begun to understand animal behavior, herd dynamics, and the logic of risk versus reward. This wasn't desperation, it was planning, and it was dangerous. Early humans hunted without bows, without guns, often without even projectile weapons, just thrusting spears and courage. Some likely ran prey into exhaustion under the hot sun, relying on their unparalleled stamina and ability to sweat while pursuing animals over long distances. Others likely used traps, ambushes, and group tactics, coordinating with hand, signals, shouts, or early proto-language. But hunting wasn't just about protein. It was about power, cooperation, and identity. To bring down a 500-pound animal and feed your group for days required not just strength, but trust, timing, and shared knowledge. Food was no longer merely sustenance. It became social glue. Successful hunters gained status. Meals were distributed in ways that reinforced hierarchy, kinship, and reciprocity. Around shared meals, culture deepened. Even our bodies changed to support this shift. Our shoulders adapted for throwing, our hands for crafting, our eyes for judging distance across open terrain. Most tellingly, our brains swelled, demanding ever more energy that could only be met by high-calorie diets rich in fat and meat. Over time, our digestive systems became increasingly efficient at processing animal products, while our guts shrank further, no longer needing to ferment plant matter like our herbivorous relatives. But meat wasn't all we ate, nor was it meant to be. Despite our growing dependence on animal foods, archaeological sites from this era consistently reveal a wide variety of plant remains: seeds, nuts, tubers, fruits, and legumes. In cold or dry seasons, when game grew scarce, these foods were essential. Some early humans even developed methods for detoxifying or leaching poisonous plants, grinding seeds into paste or flour, and storing them for future use. This dietary flexibility, the ability to shift between hunting and gathering depending on the climate, terrain, and season, is one of the single most important evolutionary advantages humans ever developed. Unlike other predators, we could survive the lean times. Unlike herbivores, we weren't limited by what's growing. We became ecological generalists, thriving in forests, grasslands, deserts, and eventually ice-age tundras. As Homo sapiens emerged from Africa and spread across the globe, they adapted their diets with astonishing speed. Coastal populations dove for shellfish and hunted seals. Mountain dwellers tracked elk and wild goats. Forest communities gathered wild yams, honey, and fruit. And all the while, culture and cuisine evolved side by side. Hunting wasn't just survival, it was ceremony. Gathering wasn't just collecting, it was knowledge passed through generations. Every landscape offered a new menu. Every tribe shaped its own palate. And yet, beneath this global diversity lay the same foundation, an omnivorous anatomy honed by millions of years of adaptation. A brain built for remembering where the roots grow and when the herd migrates, and a body designed to move, pursue, and prepare. Chapter 3 of our story is not just about eating, it's about becoming. The shift from scavenger to hunter did more than feed our stomachs. It structured our societies, rewired our minds, and redefined what it meant to be human. These early hunters weren't just surviving. They were shaping landscapes, forging alliances, and building the scaffolding of language, ritual, and culture. Their prey filled bellies, but their actions filled time. With storytelling, with planning, with meaning. Around every fire-lit meal, humanity was being cooked into something new. An apex predator, a cultural creature, a species now fully aware that food was not just a need, but a narrative. And that narrative had only just begun. Chapter 4. The first farmers. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity thrived as roaming hunter-gatherers, following the rhythms of seasons and herds. eating whatever the landscape offered. But around 12,000 years ago, something changed. In several corners of the world, humans began staying put. They cleared small plots of land, scattered seeds, and returned months later to harvest the results. The age of agriculture had begun. In the Fertile Crescent, people cultivated wheat, barley, lentils, and chickpeas. In China, they planted rice and millet. In the Americas, it was maize, squash, and beans. What's remarkable is that this transition from wild foraging to organized farming didn't happen just once. It arose independently in multiple places, possibly driven by climate change at the end of the last ice age, which made wild food less predictable and spurred innovation. Farming allowed communities to produce more food on less land, support larger populations, and settle in permanent villages. But it also narrowed the human diet dramatically. Where hunter-gatherers might have consumed hundreds of plant and animal species each year, early farmers often depended on just a handful of staple crops. This shift came with a price. Skeletons from early farming societies show signs of nutritional stress, anemia, and stunted growth. Diets rich in grains but low in protein led to vitamin deficiencies, while living in close quarters introduced new pathogens and epidemics. Yet farming persisted because it allowed people to store food, raise children in one place, and build surplus. Surplus meant trade, specialization, hierarchy, and eventually civilization. Cities rose. Writing emerged. Religious rituals evolved around planting and harvest. Human history, as we know it, was born in the fields. And still, agriculture didn't erase everything that came before. People continued to hunt, fish, and forage, adding variety to their diets when they could. And over generations, bodies began adapting to this new lifestyle. Some populations evolved better starch digestion. Others, like many Europeans and East Africans, developed the ability to digest milk as adults, an adaptation to dairy farming. The very shape of our jaws, faces, and dental arches changed as our diets became softer and more processed. But perhaps the most lasting legacy of early farming was psychological. For the first time, food became property stored and guarded. Scarcity could be planned for, surplus protected. The connection between food and land, food and power, food and identity grew tighter. Chapter 4 marks a turning point, not just in diet, but in destiny. By choosing to cultivate the land, humans stepped into a new evolutionary role. No longer just eaters of nature, but its managers and manipulators. The human diet was now no longer shaped only by biology or ecology. It was shaped by choice. And that choice would lead to both abundance and imbalance, progress and problems, innovation and inequality. Agriculture fed empires, built monuments, and sparked revolutions. But it also set the stage for every modern debate about what we should eat, who controls our food, and how it affects our health. Our ancestors began farming to survive, but in doing so, they sowed the seeds of everything that would follow. Chapter 5: Food, Culture, and Genetic Legacy. As agriculture spread and civilizations rose, food evolved from mere sustenance into culture, identity, and power. Grains like wheat, rice, and maize became staples, but also sacred, woven into rituals, festivals, and mythologies. Food was no longer just eaten. It was celebrated, taxed, traded, and weaponized. It shaped empires and economies, castes, and cuisines. Over generations, this new relationship with food left deep imprints in our DNA. In regions where milk became a dietary norm, people evolved lactase persistence, allowing adults to digest lactose. In parts of the Arctic, Inuit populations developed genes to process high-fat, meat-heavy diets. In tropical regions, where plant-based diets dominated, people retained enzymes better suited to breaking down fibrous vegetation. Even gut bacteria diversified across cultures, adapting to local ingredients and food practices. These small genetic edits are evolutionary footnotes to the massive social shifts brought by agriculture. Yet despite the power of farming, most societies didn't abandon their hunter-gatherer instincts entirely. Fishing, foraging, and seasonal hunting persisted alongside fields and orchards. And as humans spread across the globe, diet became a story of place, shaped by what could grow, what could be stored, what could be shared. But the further we moved from our evolutionary roots, the more dissonance appeared. Many modern health issues, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, are linked to the mismatch between our ancient physiology and modern diets rich in sugar, salt, and processed fats. We are biological omnivores with Stone Age genes living in a supermarket world. And that is the central lesson of our dietary evolution. We did not evolve for one perfect diet, but for flexibility. What made us human was not what we ate. It was our ability to adapt, again and again, to whatever the earth provided. The question isn't what we were meant to eat. It's how well we can keep adapting now. Chapter 6: Supermarkets, Science, and the Search for Healthy. In the span of just a few centuries, a blink in evolutionary time, the human diet changed more rapidly and more radically than ever before. From hand-tilling fields and grinding grain by stone, we leapt to mechanized agriculture, global trade networks, and processed food that travels thousands of miles before reaching our plates. Supermarkets replaced savannas, convenience replaced seasonality. Food became constant, curated, and often disconnected from the land or labor that once defined it. For the first time in history, more people now die from overnutrition than undernutrition. In much of the world, calories are cheap, but nutrients are scarce. Industrial food is engineered for taste, shelf life, and scale, not necessarily for health. Sugars, refined flours, seed oils, additives, and preservatives dominate modern diets, while fiber, micronutrients, and diversity fall by the wayside. And yet, in response to this disconnect, a new era of food awareness emerged. As rates of obesity, heart disease, diabetes, and autoimmune disorders climbed, scientists and citizens alike began asking, what should we eat? Nutrition science, still in its infancy, tried to catch up, offering guidelines, food pyramids, and dietary revolutions. From low-fat to low-carb, keto to vegan, paleo to plant-based, diets became not just health strategies, but belief systems, ideologies, brands, even identities. But the truth remained more complex than any single trend could explain. Because if evolution taught us anything, it's that there is no one-size-fits-all human diet. Genetics, gut microbiomes, geography, culture, and lifestyle all shape how individuals respond to food. What heals one body may harm another. What nourished our ancestors in the Arctic would starve someone on the equator. The question is no longer just what humans evolved to eat, but how we, individually and collectively, can adapt our ancient biology to the modern world. Technology has become both a threat and a tool. On one hand, ultra-processed foods hijack ancient cravings for salt, sugar, and fat. On the other, scientific advances allow us to test blood glucose responses, analyze microbiomes, and personalize nutrition like never before. Some dream of lab-grown meat, algae protein, and vertical farms. Others return to ancestral eating, seeking wild foods, fermented products, or indigenous food systems. For many, food has become political, a question of justice, sustainability, and sovereignty. Who grows our food? Who profits from it? Who gets access to real nourishment, and who doesn't? The same adaptability that once let humans eat roots, meat, and milk now forces us to navigate food deserts, marketing campaigns, and climate crises. Still, the human story of eating isn't over. We are, as ever, a species in transition, caught between the wild past and an engineered future. Our bodies carry the imprint of every meal our ancestors scavenged, hunted, cooked, planted, and shared. Our brains, once fueled by fire-roasted marrow, now scroll menus on screens. But the core remains. To eat is to be human. Every bite is an echo of survival, of memory, of connection. And perhaps the real answer to what we were meant to eat lies not in mimicking a mythical past or chasing a perfect future, but in remembering that food has always been more than fuel.